Hello, here we are once again with Mookie Tenembaum. We are exploring, as you know, his philosophy, his disillusionism, and in particular the misalgic theory about human behavior as aversion to suffering, basically. Through these videos, as many of you already know, we've been trying to illustrate this philosophy with facts from everyday life. We've been trying to sort of bridge abstract concepts with matters that many of us find in our daily life. We've been covering even some news. Since the very beginning, we've been discussing the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. As of late, we've been concerned with the war in Ukraine. But today, we are going to dedicate this video to, I would say, a strange matter within disillusionism, which is culture. And we are going to discuss culture from a disillusionist point of view.
Well, first we will discuss really the fallacy of culture as a prestigious word, as a prestigious, as a way to get prestige. Yes, to culture, acquiring culture to get prestige. First of all, let me go a little bit back to what disillusionism means. It means in many areas running away from suffering. That's misalgia. Yes, we run away from suffering, and that's what we do all day. And there is several ways to deal with the running away from suffering. To run away, one is the easiest one is to try to avoid. So we get the vaccine, so we don't get sick. That's one of the and many other things. We put solar. How do you say the cream for
sunblock?
Sunscreen. You use sunblock. I use sunscreen. I'm darker than you, so looks. So you put the sunscreen, and then you avoid the suffering. So this is common way. That's the most common. Then you have, of course, once you are suffering, well, your leg is hurting. You take an aspirin or a ibuprofen or whatever, and then you deal with that. But the most common way in which we have evolved into running away from suffering is distraction.
Okay.
Distraction. And the culture is just that, distraction. So what we are talking about in distraction is you use distraction in several ways. You use distractions once you have a problem and you try to distract yourself. Your leg hurts, yes, and until your ibuprofen kicks in, you watch something on Netflix, yes. If it's or even watch porn. I mean, it doesn't matter what do you do, yes. You just distract yourself from the pain. The stronger the pain, the harder, or the stronger has to be the allure of that distraction. And it is allure, really. It is the way you allure yourself, your attention to be grabbed by that distraction. Let me give you some data that I've talked about it several times, but it's good to hear about it again. We have about 20 kilobytes per second of attention. We can't attend anymore. And there is an argument if we can divide the attention or not. There is some people think they can, others think it's intermittent, but you never can really divide the attention. It doesn't matter. 20 kilobytes per second is not very much. It's a short YouTube movie with very low resolution. So it's very, very low. So once you got your attention distracted from your pain into that television program or that porn movie or whatever, or sports or whatever it is, you got it. That's one thing. But the second one, which is very much often put, is this: when you are distracted, you are sleepwalking. Okay, one of the things about distraction, you are sleepwalking. When you sleepwalk, you don't suffer. Thus, you can preventively distract yourself to avoid any sufferings that may come across and you don't know about it. So you are in a situation in which you have distracted yourself from something to something, not necessarily from something. The distraction begins that way. So the issue that we are going to talk about it is that culture, and I mean high culture, opera, knowledge of geography or knowledge, general knowledge, what's called general knowledge in general, that you participate on the TV programs about general culture, it's just a distraction, as much as a porn movie or how to cut your nails for growth, whatever that will be. Florencio, what is your opinion about this?
My opinion is that first, I really like the idea of a preemptive distraction. I think it explains lots of our habits. I can see myself incurring in certain behaviors as a preemptive distraction. It's not suffering per se. It's just I have the habit of reading, watching movies, listening to music, in case suffering kicks in. But what I wanted to ask you is, as you were speaking, to me it's obvious that there's a privilege. For instance, if in distracting myself, I watch a cultural program, I watch a French movie from the Nouvelle Vague by a famous filmmaker, than if I watch a porn movie or an erotic movie or a sports film. And this is just an example. There's a privilege in listening to opera over listening to rap music, and all over. I can say if I read Russian novels, it's somehow better than if I'm reading the gossip columns at the newspapers. And I want to ask you about the source of this privilege, because to a degree, this exists all around us. So I get that they are all just distractions, and as good as they are in distracting you, that's all that matters. But why the privilege? Why the hierarchy, I would say?
Well, the question of privilege, really, the history of privilege really begins with, you could say, people who are from the nobility. So everybody who was in the court, in the king's court or in the seigneur court, depending on part of the court, you had a privilege. You were somebody. You differentiate from other people because you were part of that, and you inherited. So you are the third vice viscount of Hertfordshire. I'm really ad libbing. I have no idea about that. Or you are the bishop of Canterbury or of Mainz. So in the church, the people in church also had a hierarchy, and that hierarchy was, and it was closed. There was no way you could get into there. If you go to your clerical in church, there were no poor popes until late the 20th century. Popes came all from very high families or rich families. See? So that kind of, or in the military, of course, yes, general. So this was closed. That's it. Nobody can get in there. It was a numerus clausus, no more people than those, and they will invite each other into dinners, and they will do things together. And they, of course, the most important thing about nobility is that they own the land, which was the only mean of production until the 18th century. Then comes the 18th century, and comes the Industrial Revolution. Suddenly, people can become very rich without being part of nobility. And that's what starts happening. So these people, of course, are being greeted by the nobility that is getting poorer and poorer with time, the church that has an unending appetite for money and for resources. So these people were accepted. And there is a very interesting story. At the time they were invited to balls in the court, in the French court, that was very common. There would be a list outside, and the list would say Henri III, Viscount of Mainz, the other one, Lord of something, and this name, and at the end, SNOB, snob. sans nobilité, without nobility. That was done so people will not come around and say, I am part of the nobility because I'm the party. No, no, no. You are here because of your money. Don't bring us, don't try to get into. So that was the second group that came in. And it looked like, again, you have to be either rich. It was a closed number. And then came a third party, those who were in culture, those who were part of the cultural scene. Okay, now those didn't have to be rich. They could be painters, they could be regisseurs of an opera, and all them will be invited to those dinners, to those balls, in which they will all mingle. And how they acquire knowledge? Well, through libraries, through libraries to access or to study in the church, to grow inside of a church. Normally it was ecclesiastical schools that people got in. So even if you were poor, not very poor, but middle class, you could get in, and then you become one of the three pillars of prestige. Yes, but that ended suddenly with the advent of internet. Suddenly, Google has all the answers. If you know the capital of Turkmenistan, that was very nice, but anybody, any child can outcompete you in 2 seconds about the capital of Turkmenistan. In fact, he doesn't have to know how to read or write. He just can say it, and then you have it. So the value of the knowledge, it got totally diluted. Money is still there. Yes, it's still a barrier, and nobility is just
gone. Almost gone.
It is a distraction. Now you read about nobility, they do this to that, and he got angry with this, and he married a black woman, but she's not very black, and her husband, the father, the children, it's all very big, problematic. That is distractions. That is as good as knowing the difference between Brahms, Beethoven, and Bach.
I have another question now, because all the examples you are giving and all the examples I can think of, be them classical music, literature, painting, exotic geography, they are not only a privilege of knowledgeable people, but they also share a common trait, which is this is almost all useless knowledge. I don't see at these parties you are describing someone who really knows what is needed to fix a car or an elevator. I think there's a certain need there for useless knowledge that I also want to inquire. What's the connection between the prestige of culture and useless knowledge?
Well, all prestigious culture, in fact, is useless, should be useless. As you say, if I today will know what kind of motor uses elevators in Japan for buildings, and as you know, I am not in that business. If I would say it's a Fuji number 302, yes, that will count as general knowledge. But if I am if I do that for a living, if I am a technician of elevators not in Tokyo, in Bujumbura, it doesn't matter where, yes, and I know about it, that wouldn't count. That wouldn't be general knowledge. So not only has to be useless, it has to be personally useless. Okay? So the same piece of culture, the same one, in the hands of somebody who has nothing to do with that knowledge is very valuable, and it becomes zero valuable if it is part of your profession. And I can tell you the capital of Turkmenistan, I think it's Ashgabat, I'm not sure. But it didn't say it's Ashgabat. That I know it's Ashgabat, that's, how do you know Turkmenistan? But if I was a truck driver taking things from Tajikistan to Turkmenistan, and I had to go to Ashgabat, the knowledge of Ashgabat wouldn't count.
Nothing.
So the important thing is all this is distraction. It has no other value. It is the same to know, as I say, about an aria, the words of an aria of Mozart, the same thing as to know which of the nail polishes sold it's cheaper and it lasts better. It is the same. It is distraction, unless your suffering has to do with nail polish, of course. Then we are not talking about distraction.
No.
Yes, but we know what we're talking about. This is the fallacy of culture. There is no culture. There is just knowledge that in the past was, again, useless. Again, all the parties, think about it. In a party made by a count, and he brings bankers and bishops and painters, they are all talking useless things, obviously, unless it's a bank meeting, yes, in which then it's a business meeting. But if not,
they
it's
discuss
useless.
dividends.
Discuss dividends, yes.
But we're almost out of time, but you mentioned the internet revolution. You mentioned the situation we all are familiar with, in which a child, without even being able to read, can ask Google and find all these answers that we pride ourselves because we've learned over time. So I want to ask you, what's the consequence of all this technological change for culture and for the institutions that have to do with the promotion of culture, beginning with the school to which we are sending this child who already has a smartphone, who already has access to Google?
Well, I think we spoke about it, and I said, and I will say it again to be very clear, a school is a glorified babysitter. I repeat, a school is just a glorified babysitter. There is no point to teach anything in school. Anything, not even reading and writing, as I said. If you can ask it and you get an answer, it's enough. And of course, somebody said, and how would you know what to ask? Believe me, when a person needs to know something, he knows what to ask. You know, it is you can hear the voice of the aristocracy that lost its shine with the years. The knowledge aristocracy. Yes, there is a knowledge aristocracy, and they would like to keep their monopoly. But you cannot ask Google if that painting is beautiful. No, you don't have to ask beautiful. You can ask the guy. He will look. The painting looks like to me. I have to say, a Pollock looks like just a bunch of stains. I never understood what they see people, but of course, people can see whatever they want. But if you ask, if you don't have the question, you don't need it. You see, knowledge is on the need to know. Incredibly, the CIA was right. On the need to know basis, you don't need to know anything else. If you want knowledge as a distraction, of course, it's still very good. Of course, I have to say that when my leg hurts a lot, opera doesn't do anything to me. But that's me.
Very good. I think that covers it. We're definitely out of time. Culture will come back to hunt us, I'm sure. But let's wrap it up for today. Thank you, Mookie. See you next time.
Culture doesn't hunt. We hunt. Remember, we are the hunter-gatherers. But we gather in culture. That was not a good one. Bye.
If you enjoyed the video, please like it, comment and subscribe.